A little advice. A little advice. Come on, yeah. Just a little advice. Just a little advice with Christine Little. Check it out.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Little Advice Podcast, a podcast where I, comedian Christine Little, usually gives advice to my guest. This episode is a little different. This is episode number 27 with one of my really good friends, Kristen Chamberlain, who is a financial advisor. I think money health is super, super important, so I was jazzed to have her on and pick her brain a little bit. She is a financial advisor, so she's legally not allowed to give very specific, detailed advice, but some of the general advice she gives is really helpful, as well as the second half of the podcast where she breaks down how to fill out a balance sheet to figure out your worth, your net worth, not like your worth as a person. I hope you guys enjoy it and you learn something from this episode. If you like it and you do enjoy it, or if you have any questions, feel free to hit up Kristen Chamberlain on LinkedIn or message me directly. I'm on Instagram at TheXTeen, which is T-I-N-E, Little, on Instagram. Also, you can join the Facebook group, a Little Advice Podcast Facebook group, or message me on Facebook directly. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. With no further ado, here is Kristen Chamberlain with episode number 27 of Little Advice. Hello, I am here with my good friend, Kristen Chamberlain. Hello, Kristen.
Hi, Christine.
I'm so excited that you agreed to do this because you're not a comedian, you're a finance person, and I know you didn't want to.
Well, yeah, it came out of the blue, but if anything I can say helps people that are listening, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. You've definitely helped me with my personal finances and shedding some light on some things that I wasn't sure about, and I really do believe it's important for people to have some idea of how their money works and what the best way to use money is and save and investment. I don't know, just general money terms, billions of dollars, taxes, tax cuts. I'm a little all over the place right now.
Yeah.
So tell me, like, what do you think someone like me who's low income for right now, can you speak on this, like general advice on this? Like what the best bet for them to do right now would be in terms of organizing their money?
Well, I think the topic of personal finance and personal responsibility could be, a podcast like every day for years, and you'd still have people who are confused or turned around by it. But I think there are some basic things that are important to sort of understand how they fit into every person's financial plan. The three main components are debt, taxes, and retirement planning.
Okay.
And, I think what's important about those is that there is good debt and there's bad debt. Taxes factor into everything. It's the single largest expense any of us ever have in a lifetime. And most people don't know that. If you ask them what's the biggest expense you'll have, people will say their education or having children, but it's taxes.
Or housing. I had no idea that myself, that taxes are the hugest. I just don't think of it as my money, so I don't get attached to it.
Well, it's not, so you shouldn't. But like it is, you do owe it. We all owe it. And then the third thing I think is really important is retirement planning, because a lot of people put off personal financial planning until way later in life and end up having to work longer than they intended, or have surprises in retirement where, you've got to factor in things that no one teaches you about when you're in school, which is a shame. And
what kind of things do they have to factor in that they don't think about?
Well, it ties into taxes a little bit. People think, well, I'm retired, I'll be in a lower tax bracket. But actually the way retirement works is you're pulling money out of the accounts that you've potentially put money into as you were working. And a lot of those are tax deferred, like a 401k, meaning when you pull that money out, that's when you pay the taxes on it. And your tax bracket in retirement is entirely dependent on the amount of money you're pulling out of those accounts. So if you have a lifestyle that costs $100,000 a year in retirement, and you're pulling that money out of your 401k, you're paying taxes as if you're in $100,000 tax bracket.
Even if you pull it out like in different stages? Like, say if you pull out $100,000, you're going to get taxed on the lump sum of $100,000.
Well, our tax brackets are marginal. So, you get taxed a certain amount up to the first tax bracket, and then every dollar over that into the second one, you get taxed, the higher rate on that. That's how the marginal tax brackets work. And I don't want to get too detailed into this.
Yeah, let's just talk about something basic, because I'm already like...
Yeah, which is why I wanted to talk about the three main things, which are debt, taxes, and retirement.
Okay, let's get into
So
this.
The basics on that are, debt, you want to make sure that's under control. Mortgage is considered good debt. Your student, to an extent, as long as you're buying a house, it's reasonably priced for your income. Student loan is good debt.
What?
But, yeah, it's reasonable debt. It's low interest. And there's bad debt, though, like credit card debt and personal loan debt. And something a lot of people do is let that credit card debt or car loan debt that they're paying, large amounts of interest on, and they're paying the minimum payments, and they just let it go for ages and ages. And that's really something that everybody should work on reducing, is especially credit card debt. It's an epidemic in our country. And what it does is it reduces, your ability to put money away into vehicles that pay you interest. And so you're losing out on, gains.
So why does it prevent you from doing that? Because you're spending the money, you could be saving that money and putting it away, or because...
Yeah, it all ties into the cost of money. When you're borrowing it from your credit card company, you're paying them interest to borrow that money.
Right.
If you, like let's say you make a purchase for $1,000 and you don't pay that off for 5 years. Credit card interest rates range usually from 12 to 24%, sometimes higher. And so the cost of borrowing that $1,000 has skyrocketed, versus if you just paid the $1,000 and then took the money you would have paid in interest over those 5 years to your credit card company and put it into, something in an E-Trade account or your 401k, or, put it elsewhere where companies pay you for putting your money with them. You get compounding interest on that. So there's reasons to sort of look at your debt and figure out if you're being smart with it, or if you're just putting off the inevitable, because you will have to pay that off eventually. So you might as well work on paying it off sooner rather than later if you can. Taxes, as I sort of touched on, are real important because it is the biggest expense you'll ever have. And also, our economy right now, where it's booming, yes, but we're also in one of the lower tax environments that we've been in the United States in a long time. And it's scheduled to change. Well, I say scheduled, but it's not. It's expected to change because we have an aging population of baby boomers and we have a slowing population growth. Or I said that kind of clumsily, but, we're reproducing less than we used to be. And so our country has two main problems, which is Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. And when all the baby boomers need those resources and our current tax levels are low and our current workforce is low, what they're going to have to do is raise those taxes in order to get the money they need to pay out to the people they promised it to. So it's important to make sure that when you are saving money, you're looking at vehicles that can provide you tax-free money in the future.
Like what?
There's certain insurance and annuity products that you can put money in tax-free. There's Roth IRAs.
How do people figure out which is going to be best for them? Especially, like I said, someone who has lower income, like myself. It's like, yeah, I want to look at retirement, but also I am not making a lot of money and I also want to survive. And I also want to have some sort of savings if something hits the fan.
Sure.
So what would you say to someone like that? I mean, not specifically, but...
Yeah. No, I think that it's a great question. And what happens usually when I work with lower income clients that are referred to me or whatever, or that come across, my desk or my information, whatever, it usually starts with a conversation about what they have and what they owe, like actually just getting a full picture of their financial situation. And if they're, a paycheck away from financial ruin, which a lot of people are, one major car breakdown or one major health incident, and they don't have any money in the bank to pay that off, so they put it on credit cards, and then that snowballs. No. So what I usually do to help get them on track is start with habits, which is, pay all of your bills on time in full if you can. If the minimum balance, whatever, but just pay. If you're paying all your bills on time in full, figure out a way to then save a little bit additional income to ultimately get to between 3 and 6 months of expenses in an emergency account.
Is there like a good rule for a percentage people could be saving? Like a minimum, like 1%, 2%, 10%?
Well, for different levels of where you're at in your financial picture. Like obviously if you're doing well, you want to be saving about 20% of your income, 25% of your income.
Okay.
Most people can't do that, which is why we say if you're single, you want to have about 6 months of expenses, not your income, but your expenses to pay your rent, your insurance, your car, all that stuff. And sorry, I was just pounding on the table, but
she's passionate about this.
Passionate about it.
Ruling.
Yeah. If you're a married couple and you're both working, you can put away 3 months, because if one of you lost your job or had a major disaster, the other one's income could potentially support you until you're back.
So there it is. I'm getting punished for being single again.
Well,
there should be a government program for single people.
I suppose, but I don't know what it would be.
I don't know.
Yeah.
An arranged marriage? I don't know.
That might be for a different podcast. But anyway, it's something that you can work towards.
Do you know a good resource for people who are just trying to be conscious of their finances? Like they're just starting to say, you know what, finances, that's something I need to look into. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm not at a level where I could, it would be best for me to work with a financial advisor. But is there a resource that you know of where people can start looking at the big picture, or is there an exercise they can do?
Yes. Yeah, and I think everyone should start. Well, I mean, the internet is full of advice and resources for sure, but I think one key tool that everyone can do is figure out their balance sheet, which is their assets minus their liabilities, and that gives you the full picture of what you're worth on paper. And I think that a lot of people in their mind have an idea, and then they get into the nitty-gritty of it and they don't. And so that's the first thing I usually do with clients is get through the nitty-gritty, figure out exactly and especially when I'm working with couples and they're together and we do this, it's always interesting because you would think that if you're married and you guys would both know exactly what's going on, but a lot of people don't, and they don't really understand fully what accounts their husband or their wife have through work or otherwise, so they don't really know what their financial picture really looks like as a whole.
Wow.
Yeah, so that is...
So if you're in a couple, maybe the first step is like, hey, let's get all our stuff together and see what we all have. Let's look at all of our assets. Let's look at all of our liabilities.
Yeah.
Do you know any fun psychological because look, the topics of saving money and budgeting
it's so boring, right?
It's not sexy at all. Like the thought, it's like, ooh, I could take this money and go on a trip, or I could put it in a savings account.
I know.
It's like, I think I'd rather go on a trip. It's not a very sexy thing. So is there something that you know of or that you do with your clients to help them psychologically find it more interesting to save money or think about their money?
Well, when it becomes tangible. So a lot of people say they want to own a home, right? Especially in LA, right? And you all know property values are very expensive. And so I think when it becomes more real for them or more of like an actual concrete goal is when I ask them, well, do you like your job now? Or are you planning on staying in LA? Usually they say yes. It's like, are you going to stay in your current neighborhood? Yeah, I want to. Okay, well, what are home prices in that neighborhood? And what do the school systems there look like if they say they want to have children? It's sort of like, that show House Hunters or on HGTV. And I think it's House Hunters. It was one of them where it's like first-time home buyers. And the lady would take them, they're like, we want a
and they want all this stuff. And then it's like, our budget's $20.
Exactly. And she'll bring them to like a castle with a moat. And they're like, yes, this is exactly what we want. And she's like, cool, this is like a $3 million house. And they were like, oh, okay. Because really what they can afford is a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom in their current neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I think, everyone laughs at those people when they see it on that show. Like, how stupid, right? But truth is, most people don't know what homes cost in their neighborhood unless they're actively looking.
Yeah.
So, if that happens to be the goal, finding the comps, which you can do online real easy.
What are comps? Like, talk to us like we're third graders. Comps.
Going online and looking at houses in your neighborhood and seeing what they actually cost.
Yeah.
Comparative to the house that you actually really want. Like maybe it's the one bedroom you can afford, but you really want, something bigger and better, which you could get in a different neighborhood. So I think with clients, it makes it more concrete when they're actually looking at the reality of what it is versus saying in your mind, yeah, I want to own a house someday. Actually narrowing down the neighborhood you want to live in, what the houses cost in that neighborhood. I think it fuels the goal.
So it's like a way of visualizing in a sense. It's like, okay, once I know this is where I want to live and this, because it feels so far out, like retirement feels so far out that it's like, I can worry about that later. I can worry about that later. And then later comes and you're like, I forgot to worry about that. Oops.
Exactly. And that's what a lot of people do. So, I mean, I just used the house as an example, but it could be smaller, like the car that you really want. Like, oh, Teslas look awesome. I want to buy a Tesla in the next 2 years. Well, okay, what does it cost? What model do you want? And then how are you going to get from where you are now to that car? And it's just about, being dedicated and having goals. And again, I work with some clients who are doing so well, they each bring in like $400,000 a year, and yet they're somehow still living above their means and not saving enough to sustain that lifestyle in retirement. It really doesn't matter if you're low income or high income. It's all about responsibility for your situation, whatever it is. Those two groups of people are going to have very different lifestyles. But if you want to continue those lifestyles without reducing them in your retirement years, you got to plan for it. So whether you're planning for, a $10 million retirement or a $250,000 retirement, it still requires discipline, a plan, and goals.
What do you think are some common obstacles people face when it's time to start looking at their finances, like why they don't do it?
It's incredible. It's so emotional. I mean, people have such emotional ties to money. And a question I ask clients is, are you a saver or a spender? And whatever answer they give, I always ask, where did you learn that? Was it from your parents when you were growing up, or is it something you came to on your own? And a lot of people will say, yeah, my parents were terrible with money. It was scary growing up, not knowing where this was going to come from. They never taught me about money, or the opposite. They were really stringent and blah, blah, blah. So, we learn about money from our parents in very different ways. Schools don't really teach you about money. And so, you trust your parents implicitly. And so, sometimes they give you terrible advice from a well-meaning place. They just don't know it's bad advice. Pay off all your debt. That's a common thing that parents, old school advice, pay off all your debt. Whereas really it makes a lot of sense to pay off, student loan debt, for instance, pay off as much as you can, I suppose, but you also want to put money away so that you're taking advantage of compounding interest.
Don't just focus on paying off your debt, but also focus on building your savings.
Yeah, because you don't want to wait, work solely on paying off and mind you, paying off debt is a good thing. But what I'm saying is if you have the choice to maybe pay off your student loan debt over 5 years or 10 years, and the difference is being 25 years old and starting to invest in other things versus 30 years old, you just paid off your student debt, and now for the first time you're starting to put money into the market or into other vehicles that will earn you interest. That 5 years is detrimental. It's almost better to do pay off and invest like a parallel, like side by side. You know what I mean?
I didn't know it would make that much of a difference because...
Well, they call compounding interest the eighth wonder of the world. I think Warren Buffett claimed that. Yeah.
The eighth wonder of the world. So is it too late for people in their 30s?
It's never too late until you're dead or retired or broke.
How do you know someone is like a good person to talk to? I know you're good because you're my friend, but other than that...
I think what's important when you're looking for someone is to make sure you feel listened to and heard. If you're a couple, I think it's really important that both of you are included. A lot of financial professionals will work with a husband and not the wife, which is incredible in this day and age, but it's true. But also a lot of the times one person in a relationship will say, well, I let her handle all the finances, or I let him do it all because I don't understand it. And that's okay, but go to those meetings with them so you're getting the whole picture. And so you know who the financial professional that you're working with is and that you have a relationship with them as well. But other than that, just being heard, making sure you're not being forced into things that you don't understand. Because keep in mind, these are people who that's their job is to, yes, help you get your finances in place, but they also need to earn a living, which is why some people will charge for their advice. Some people won't. Some people will, pay you, you'll pay them to manage your whole portfolio. Other times you'll pay on a per product basis. So it's just a matter of understanding how you're paying this person and making sure you're comfortable with that. Also, if you're asking questions and you're not getting good answers or you feel like they're being evasive, maybe find somebody else. I suppose it's just like any professional that you hire. You just want to make sure that your relationship is a good one and you get your questions answered.
Okay. All right, cool. So basically do a Google search and interview people, it sounds like.
Well, I would ask for recommendations. Yeah. I think word of mouth is real valuable. And that's how I build my whole client base. I can't advertise because there's certain rules when you are FINRA registered about how you can't really do a commercial. That's why you've never seen a commercial for a financial advisor. Asking other people is a great way to go.
So it seems like the first couple steps is get your 3 to 6 month savings together.
Mm-hmm. Have an emergency fund.
Have your emergency fund, or if you're in a couple, put all your assets and liabilities. 3 months or 6 months. Mm-hmm. And then from there, start seeking out advice. And also have a good goal in mind. I need to buy a car, or I want to buy a home in X amount of years in this neighborhood. Yeah. And that'll help.
And, most people have some, like you said, retirement seems so far away, but people know, they understand they don't want to be working when they're 80 years old. So they, most people want to be set for retirement. Another thing that's very easy to do is go to your HR person at your job and find out about all the benefits that you're offered. Because usually when people start a job, they're signing a million documents. They're like, okay, I'll look into this later. They get their health insurance squared away, but most people don't know what's offered in the way of group disability insurance through their job, their 401k, maybe they'll have an idea of what the match is or not. But it's great to find that out and make sure you're not leaving money on the table, especially with a 401k. If your company's matching your investment, take advantage. It's free money. And I don't always think the right thing to do is to max out your 401k, because that's $18,500 a year you can put into your 401k, but at least up to the match, and then figure out if there is, if there's debt or something that you want to pay down. That's when it's good to maybe get some help and to really find out from a professional what is the best way to go. But your HR department's a great first step. The emergency fund is a great first step, and then you have a better picture of where you're at.
Okay, but if you're a freelancer and you don't have an HR department, just focus on the savings, 3 to 6 months, and
yeah, for sure. It's tougher. It's true because of what you do in your career.
The IRA, I guess you could get an IRA. I mean, I do have one of those. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but I got it so long ago. It's not like something I don't remember all the details of the things I've invested in. I'm just they're there, but I don't remember the details of them.
Right. Well, if you're a little bit more advanced and it's not just about saving, the emergency fund, if you do have some investments, making sure you understand them and reviewing them quarterly is good. Mm-hmm. Finding out what the fees you're paying for them are. And again, this is where you can go and reach out and get help.
Okay. We're going to take a short break and then we'll talk about how to do this balance sheet when we come back on A Little Advice. Hey y'all, thanks for listening to this episode of A Little Advice. I hope you are learning a lot about money and you're getting your life together. Not that you don't have your life together, but I hope it's getting even more together. If you'd like to see me do comedy in person, this Wednesday I will be at Coos Bay at the Mill Casino in Oregon. And on Friday I will be at Chadswick Pub in Oregon, in Medford, Oregon. And then I'll be doing local shows in LA probably. So check out my calendar on my website, KristenLittle.net. And please don't forget to rate, subscribe, review this podcast. It means a lot, and it'll help other people find the podcast. And then you'll look like a hero, and everyone wants to look like a hero. Thank you guys so much for listening to And we are back several moments later. I'm with Kristen Chamberlain. We are talking money. She is a financial advisor, but I can't tell you where. It is a secret. Now, tell us about this whole balance sheet thing.
Sure.
Doing a basic balance sheet.
Okay, so it's just a way to figure out where you are. A balance sheet and a budget are the two best things you can do for yourself. If you wanted to do this at home and you really want to do a deep dive into what what you should be putting on it, I'm going to go through it real quick. So for your assets, there's taxable and tax deferred assets. So you'd want to include savings, CDs, bonds, any mutual funds you have, any stocks that you have in taxable assets. If you wanted to go real deep, you could figure out what your cost basis on those investments are. It helps you figure out what your taxes are in the long run. I don't know what that means. Yeah, so I'll keep it simple and just say, just put the basic assets.
I don't know what cost basics?
Basis, yeah.
Basis.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So tax deferred assets would be your 401k, any annuities you have, IRAs, if you're saving for a child's education in a 529 plan, those are all tax deferred. So you'd want to do you and your spouse for all of this. If you're married, just you. If you're single, of course. And then you have your personal and business assets. So if you own your home, if you own your vehicle or any other personal property or business interests, again, figuring out what the current value of that asset is, what your purchase price was, it helps you figure out the true value of that asset. And so then what you do is you subtract from that all of your liabilities. So liabilities could be your mortgage, any equity loans, personal and student loans, car loans, and credit cards.
Question.
Sure.
You have the home, like under assets, you have home ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if you are not making a mortgage payment? Because your mortgage payment is under liability as well. So how would be the equity in your home?
So yeah.
As an asset?
Yeah, your home is an asset. Once you purchase a property, it's an asset. But of course, the mortgage on that is a liability. So
the value of the home? Is that what you're putting down under the assets?
Yep. So you put down what you, and that's why you figure out what you bought it for and what it's worth. It helps figure it out. So sometimes you have more equity in the home than you thought. But for the basics, again, you can just do the value of the home. The current market value of your house is the asset, but you have to obviously put what your mortgage is as one of the liabilities.
Okay.
So that helps you figure out like exactly what you're worth on paper. And then of course you take your salary into account when you're looking at this. So you know what you have on paper, what you're worth. Sometimes it's a negative if you have more debt than you have assets. Sometimes you're up, which is great when you have, even if it is in the form of your home, like it still matters because you can use certain things like your home as collateral for a loan or, and you can borrow money for a very cheap interest rate if you have those types of things. So it's just good to know. Then you figure out what your salary is so you know what's coming in. And then the most eye-opening thing for most people is their monthly budget. If you ask someone what they spend in a month, chances are they're going to give you a very different answer than what is actually going out. So for a budget, there's very specific items that you want to take into account. And so when you're doing your budget, you want to include your mortgage or your rent, your property taxes, your home maintenance, your homeowner's insurance, utilities, gas, water, cable, all of that, your phone bill. You want to include the amount you spend on groceries every month, on personal care. If you're getting manicures twice a month or pedicures or whatever, don't forget to add that in. Clothes, dry cleaning, if you have help around your house, if you have lawn care, if you have professional dues to any associations, any unions, or whatever.
I thought you said dudes.
No.
So
wait, I'll just finish. So if anyone's writing it down. Okay. Your credit card payments, other loan payments, you want to include your car payment, your car insurance, gas, car maintenance, health insurance, life insurance, long-term care insurance if you have it, the amount you spend on prescriptions or drugs every month, and then the more fun things that you spend your money on, like dining out, movies or sporting events, hobbies, vacation, and travel. And then, and if any of these are annual, like your property taxes, just divide it by 12 and whatever, and try to actually get the monthly figure. And so once you have your balance sheet, your salary, and then your monthly expenses, it gives you a real clear idea of where you are. If you're, barely breaking even, if you have extra money left over at the end of the month, awesome. That's also when you should go to a financial planner. They can help you invest that money. If you find out that you are spending more than you are making, you've got to make adjustments. It would be great to say just make more money. That's incredibly difficult a lot of the time. But you can look at that budget and maybe scale back. Maybe dining out needs to drop down, to instead of 4 times a week, twice a week, like whatever you can do to start building better habits. But it's hard to get a handle on your finances if you don't know where you stand. So for everybody out there, the one takeaway from today, I would say, is try to take into account your complete budget with all these little detailed things, your balance sheet and your salary, just to figure out where you stand.
Okay. So what is the biggest shock that people have after doing this?
I think what most people say is, wow, I've never gone through this before. I've never thought about it before. So I think the exercise of really diving into their budget and their spending habits, because we all think we know, but until you really do it, and you can do it on a spreadsheet or whatever, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but it's very eye-opening. Like, oh, wow, I spend way more money than I thought I did. And that's a problem.
How far is it good for them to go back when they're looking at their expenses? Like 1 year, 2 years, 6 months?
I mean, 6 months is fine.
Oh, okay.
Unless something drastic has changed.
But sometimes there's like car maintenance and things that come up. Like,
And that's one of them.
Or trips that come up. So that's like sometimes it'll be every other year. So do you want to go back 2 years or?
I think when you're looking at things like vacation and travel, you that one's tough. You could actually go back and look through all your finances the last like 2 years or so. But I feel like most people kind of know, like, well, I went on 2 trips last year. I had to travel for a friend's wedding. And then I went home for Christmas or the holidays or something like that. And if you know that's your pretty general pattern, I think you can make assumptions that the next few years will be the same. But it's really just about trying to be honest. And that's the thing too, when you're doing this on your own, sometimes people will, when I'm working with them, will tell me one thing, and then the next time I see them, it's like, yeah, I was spending way more than I thought I was. Like, sometimes people lie, even to me, because it's hard to face this stuff sometimes. Especially if you think you're okay with money and you're looking at it and you're like, maybe I'm not.
Oh.
People are afraid of being judged because finances are one of those things
that's
like, it's personal. So when you're doing it, be honest with yourself, be honest with your partner if you're with somebody, because money issues are one of the biggest stressors in a marriage or a partnership. And so getting it all out in the open, even if it's not good.
Do you think it still helps people when they get it out in the open, even if it's not good?
Yes.
You look at it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you're hiding like bad spending habits, or you've got debt you never told your partner about, like, that doesn't feel good to keep that to yourself, because you shouldn't, and you should be upfront with this person that you're sharing your life with. So yeah, when you're both aware of what it is, you can address it. It's really like anything. You've got to just face it head on, because I know I was saying before, it's very emotional and it's very personal. That's how it feels, but really what it comes down to is just numbers. It's just math.
Okay, can I ask you this one, I guess final question, unless that turns into something else, but what is the biggest change that you've seen in someone after them getting real with their finances, either emotionally or tangibly? Can you think of anything?
Well, it's kind of hard to say, because again, I think the biggest change would be going from someone who is not saving and just living paycheck to paycheck, and then have them turn that all around. But most of the people that I work with are like, have some of these habits in place already. I think the biggest things that I love to see are when people are paying down their toxic debt. And, if you've got $30,000 in credit card debt, that is crushing. And people who make good money will live with credit card debt. And it's insane because of the interest that you're paying on that money.
Why do you think people do that?
Well, again, it goes back to, it's behavioral. There's a whole new industry cropping up around behavioral finance, and why people do what they do, when again, it's all just numbers. And you should be able to say, okay, well, that's dumb. I'm paying a fortune to carry this debt, and I could pay it off, but I don't. Because what it would mean is, a lot of the time, what it means is allocating money that's going someplace else to that debt. And obviously it's more fun to go on vacations and to go shopping and to not care and to go out to eat versus cooking for yourself. And so you have to just, I think it's adulting. Everyone call it like, adulting is hard. That's like the new thing you see on all these memes and all of that. And it is true. It means being the person who's telling you to quit it, put that money towards this, and you know what I mean? It's just being responsible and being an adult, and that's difficult for a lot of people. it feels great when you pay off the debt, but when you're looking at it, it's like, that's so much money and I'm never going to pay it off. So it's easier just to let it linger versus like addressing it.
Yeah.
I think.
I have a lot of student loan debt that I'm like, is this ever going to be paid off?
Yeah.
And if I had the money, I would probably pay it off. But I wouldn't take equity out of my house to pay it off because I don't want to pay off debt with debt. Or, I'd rather spend that money on an investment and grow money versus just getting rid of the student loans. But some of those are so predatory, it sucks.
They can be, especially the variable rate loans.
Yeah.
In this environment, if anyone out there has a variable rate student loan, now would be a great time to see if you can reshuffle that debt into something structured that you'll know what your interest rate's going to be going forward, because rates are rising.
I'm trying.
I know.
I'm doing my best.
I know. That's the tricky thing about financial planning, though, is that is what you feel and you want, and then other people might be like, oh, I didn't know I could take equity out of my house and pay off and student loan is not toxic debt, but some people don't know they can use that equity and pay off credit card debt, which makes sense if it's a high interest rate. But the good thing is, no matter where you are financially, you could be so in debt right now, and you could just be middle of the road. Like, it's never too late to start improving your circumstances. So as long as you're not just like turning a blind eye to it all, but if you address it, there's always ways to dig yourself out of, if you're in a hole, to dig yourself out of that hole. It's never hopeless. It's always worthwhile to start trying. You might not end up in where you thought you would end up when you started life, or as an adult, as like 20, when you just got out of college, you might have thought, oh, like, of course, by the time I'm 35, I'm going to be doing so well. And then you hit 35 and you're like, shit, that did not happen. But you can improve it so that you're not 65 looking at retirement and having nothing saved, but your company is pushing you out because you're older now and they want younger employees they can hire for cheaper. Like, you just want to sort of make sure that you don't end up in a worse spot. So address it now. Start with a small amount that you can save into an emergency fund like we discussed. Once you do that, look out for a financial professional to help you. Reach out to your HR professional at work if you can, if you have that. Figure out what your benefits are there.
That would be like, hey, Christine, yeah, how's it going? Do we have a savings plan? And you're like, damn it, let me just finish my statement.
Yeah, and before you take any action saving or reaching out to HR people or to financial professionals, you can always do the little exercise we discussed of your assets minus your liabilities, your salary, and then a budget. And just to figure out exactly where your money goes every month, how much comes in, and the overall picture of where you're at.
That's hard for someone like me when it's freelance and I don't know how much money's going to come in. Do you have any tips for other freelancers in terms of how to get a good picture of?
You could take your last 3 years of what you claimed on your taxes and use that as a baseline. If you're expecting work to stay the same, I mean, obviously everyone's hoping they make it big and everything changes. But if you wanted to be conservative with your view on it, take your last 3 years of tax returns, average it out, and assume that's what you're going to make this year.
Your tax, like what you, the money that you made for those years. Okay.
Yeah.
Before taxes or after taxes?
For the salary portion, do it after taxes. Because that's actually what's coming in.
Okay.
Because like you said, you don't think of taxes as your money because it's not. You do owe it to the government. And so when you're trying to figure out the real money you're spending every month, like with your budget, you have to take your salary after taxes.
Okie dokie. Artichoke. Are there any other like hopeful anecdotes? Is it anecdotes or I think
anecdotes?
Anecdotes.
Yeah.
That
well,
you
I think just that it's like I had said a little bit ago. There's always time. It's never too late to start improving your financial situation. It might feel that way. It might feel hopeless, but it's not. And there's a lot of resources out there online, like you had said. There's
Can people ask you questions? Is that something you're open to?
Yeah, of course.
So where can people find you if they want to ask you questions?
They can. My name's Kristen Chamberlain, and they can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer questions or work with someone if they think that would be a good fit.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty jazzed to work on my finances now, to be honest.
Yeah.
After talking about it for so long.
Yeah.
Because I like to, I mean, I do it periodically, but I like to go back and say, is this still true? Was I being honest back then? Let me look and see if things have changed or what's going on. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope this has been helpful. Financial health is so important. So I think that's something we should all focus on and look at least annually. If you'd like to connect with me online on social media, I am at the XTeen Little on Instagram. Come say hi. Message me if there's anything else you'd like to learn more about, and I can have some experts on, because this has been really fun talking with you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to A Little Advice. But also, please share, rate, subscribe.